The ballroom of the Wilshire Hotel glittered with champagne flutes and designer gowns. Los Angeles elite had gathered to celebrate what everyone believed was a fairy tale, the third wedding anniversary of Simon Kang, CEO of Kang Industries, and his wife, Janice Fletcher. But fairy tales, Janice would learn that night, could turn into nightmares in the span of a heartbeat. She stood at the center of the ballroom in a custom gown the color of sun, her dark skin luminous. Her natural hair was styled in a perfect bun. She was radiant. She was happy. She had no idea her world was about to shatter. Simon approached her with a bottle of wine in hand, his expression unreadable. At 6'2" with sharp, angular features and eyes as dark as obsidian, Simon Kang had always commanded any room he entered. Tonight, however, there was something different in those eyes. Something cold. Something deadly. Simon. Janice's voice carried a note of confusion as she noticed the hardness in his jaw, the way his knuckles had gone white around the neck of the bottle. Is everything okay? The question hung in the air for a moment. Then, without warning, without mercy, Simon lifted the bottle and poured the crimson liquid over her head. The room fell silent. Gasps echoed off the crystal chandeliers. Camera phones emerged like vultures sensing death. The wine cascaded down Janice's face, ruining her makeup, staining her dress, drowning her in humiliation. Did you enjoy making a fool of me? Simon's voice was quiet, but it cut through the silence like a blade. His Korean accent, usually subtle, thickened with emotion. Janice stood frozen, wine dripping from her hair onto the marble floor. Her mind couldn't process what was happening. Simon, what are you talking about? Don't. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper that only she could hear. Don't you dare pretend you don't know. Did he make you feel alive, Janice? Did he give you something I couldn't? Tears mixed with wine on her cheeks. Please, you don't understand. I don't know what you think happened, but I would never. I never want to see your lying face again. You disgust me. The words hit her harder than any physical blow could have. Around them, guests whispered and stared. Phones captured every angle of her destruction. Tomorrow, she would be trending. Tonight, she was simply broken. Simon, please. She reached for his arm, but he jerked away as if her touch burned him. I love you. Whatever you think you saw, whatever someone told you, it's not true. I swear on everything, it's not true. Simon's jaw clenched. For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes, doubt, perhaps, or pain. But then his sister Minji appeared at his elbow, her hand on his arm, her expression sympathetic but firm. Oppa, Minji said softly in Korean, you don't have to endure this. Not tonight. Simon's face hardened again. He looked at Janice one last time, and in that look, she saw everything they'd built together crumble to dust. Security, he called out, his voice carrying across the now silent ballroom. Remove her. As security guards approached, as cameras flashed, as 300 guests watched the dissolution of what they'd thought was true love, Janice Fletcher learned a devastating truth. The man who had promised to love her forever, who had sworn she was his everything, could destroy her without a second thought. And he had no idea he was destroying an innocent woman. To understand how completely Janice's world fell apart that night, you had to understand how perfectly it had once fit together. 3 years earlier, Janice Fletcher had been a 25-year-old marketing coordinator at a mid-sized firm in downtown LA, living in a modest apartment in Koreatown, and nursing dreams of one day running her own agency. She was ambitious, kind, and hopelessly romantic, a dangerous combination, as it turned out. It was raining the day she met Simon Kang, one of those rare Los Angeles storms that turned the city into chaos. Janice had foolishly left her umbrella at home, and by the time she'd run 3 blocks from the metro station, she was thoroughly soaked. She ducked under the awning of a luxury high-rise, catching her breath, when a voice spoke behind her. This weather is unusual for LA. She turned to find a man in an impeccably tailored Tom Ford suit, holding a large black umbrella. He was Korean, she'd noted, strikingly handsome with an air of authority that suggested he was used to being obeyed. But there was also something softer in his eyes, a curiosity that made her smile despite her bedraggled state. Tell me about it, Janice had replied, wringing out one of her hair. I moved here from Chicago specifically to avoid rain. A small smile had tugged at his lips. From one extreme to another. Exactly. She'd laughed, and something had shifted in the air between them. "I'm heading toward the financial district," he'd said, offering his umbrella. "If that's your direction, we could share." Janice had hesitated. Her mother's warnings about strangers echoed in her head. But there was something about him, something genuine beneath the expensive suit. "I'd appreciate that," she'd said finally. They'd walked 6 blocks together under that umbrella, and in those 6 blocks, Janice learned he was Simon Kang, CEO of Kang Industries, a tech and real estate conglomerate. He learned she was Janice Fletcher, marketing coordinator with big dreams and an infectious laugh. By the time they'd reached her office building, neither wanted the walk to end. "Would you like to have coffee sometime?" Simon had asked, and there'd been something almost vulnerable in the question, as if he wasn't used to being uncertain. "I'd like that very much," Janice had replied. Coffee had turned into dinner. Dinner had turned into weekly dates. Weekly dates had turned into daily calls that lasted until 2 a.m. Within 3 months, they were inseparable. Simon Kang had a reputation in Los Angeles' Korean-American community as cold, calculating, and married to his work. His parents had immigrated from Seoul when he was 10, building their empire from nothing. They'd raised Simon to be ruthless in business, controlled in emotion, and strategic in all things. But with Janice, something in him softened. She made him laugh. She challenged him. She saw past the CEO to the man underneath who still remembered what it was like to be a kid helping his parents in their first small grocery store. Janice's friends had warned her. "Girl, you know his family is going to have opinions about him dating a black woman," her best friend Sarah had cautioned. And they had. Oh, they had. The first time Simon brought Janice to meet his parents, his mother had smiled politely and spoken exclusively in Korean the entire evening. His father had asked pointed questions about her background, her education, her intentions. His sister Minji had been cordial but distant, her eyes assessing Janice like a threat to be neutralized. But Simon had held Janice's hand through it all, had told his parents in no uncertain terms that Janice was the woman he loved, and they could accept it or not. "I choose her," he'd said. "I will always choose her." Their wedding had been a blend of cultures, jumping the broom alongside a traditional Korean ceremony. His parents had attended, still not fully approving, but present. Janice's family had flown in from Chicago, her mother resplendent and proud, her father walking her down the aisle with tears in his eyes. For 3 years, they'd built a life together. Simon had supported Janice's dream of starting her own marketing agency. Janice had learned Korean to communicate with his grandmother. They'd laughed and fought and made up and dreamed of the future. They'd been happy. Or so Janice had thought. What she didn't know, as she'd spent the afternoon of their anniversary getting ready for the party, was that Simon's sister had requested an urgent meeting with him. In his corner office overlooking downtown LA, Simon had looked up from his laptop to find Minji closing the door behind her, her expression grave. "Oppa, we need to talk." "Minji, I have the anniversary party in 3 hours. Can this wait?" "No." She'd set a tablet on his desk, her finger hovering over the screen. "It can't." Simon had looked down at the device, and his world had tilted on its axis. Photos. A dozen of them. His wife or a woman who looked exactly like his wife, kissing a man outside the Lowe's Santa Monica Beach Hotel. The same woman entering the hotel with this man. Emerging hours later, her hair mussed, her lipstick gone. The photos were date-stamped. Last Tuesday. The day Janice had told him she was meeting a potential client for her marketing agency. "Where did you get these?" Simon's voice had been barely audible. "I've been suspicious for months," Minji had said, her tone sympathetic but firm. The late nights she claimed were for work. The mysterious phone calls. "I hired a private investigator, and I'm so sorry, Oppa." Simon had stared at the photos, his hands clenching into fists. A muscle had jumped in his jaw. "This can't be real." "I wish it wasn't." Minji had placed a hand on his shoulder. "You deserve better than this. You gave her everything, your love, your name, your trust. And this is how she repays you." Simon Kang was a man who dealt in facts, in data, in concrete evidence. And the evidence before him seemed irrefutable. The woman in the photos had Janice's face, her hair, her figure. Pain had turned to rage. Rage had turned to ice. "The party," he'd said finally, his voice devoid of emotion. "We'll attend the party. And then I'll deal with this." Minji had hesitated. "Maybe you should just cancel." "No." Simon had stood, his expression carved from stone. "Let her have her moment. Let her smile and pretend and play the loving wife one more time. And then let her see what happens when you betray Simon Kang." And so the stage had been set. Janice, blissfully unaware, had arrived at their anniversary party glowing with love. Simon had arrived with his heart turned to ice and a bottle of wine in hand. The rest, as they say, was devastation. Janice didn't sleep that night. How could she? She sat in the living room of the Malibu beach house she'd shared with Simon for 2 years, bawling her eyes out, still wearing the wine-stained gown because she couldn't bear to take it off. Taking it off would make it real. Taking it off would mean accepting that her marriage, her life, everything she'd built with the man she loved, had ended in a single night of inexplicable horror. Her phone had died hours ago from the constant barrage of notifications. Text messages. News alerts. Social media mentions. By midnight, she was trending on Twitter. By 2 a.m., entertainment blogs had picked up the story. By dawn, she was the most talked about woman in Los Angeles for all the wrong reasons. Simon Kang's wife caught cheating, CEO's public humiliation goes viral. Kang Industries mogul destroys cheating wife at anniversary party. Who is the man in the photos? Mystery lover identified. But there were no photos. There was no lover. There was only a nightmare that Janice couldn't wake up from. Sarah had stayed with her through the night, making tea that went cold, offering comfort that couldn't penetrate the numbness. Now, as sunrise painted the Pacific Ocean in shades of gold and pink, Sarah sat beside her best friend and tried one more time. "Janice, you need to eat something. Drink something. Please." Janice's voice, when it came, was hoarse from crying. "He wouldn't even look at me, Sarah. When security was dragging me out, I was screaming his name, and he just turned away. Like I was nothing. Like 3 years meant nothing. What he did was cruel and public and wrong," Sarah said fiercely. "But girl, what are you going to do about it? You can't just sit here and let him destroy you based on some lie." "What can I do?" Janice turned to her friend, her eyes red and swollen. "He thinks he saw something. He believes I cheated. How do I prove a negative? How do I prove I didn't do something?" Janice looked down at her left hand, at the platinum wedding band embedded with diamonds that Simon had slipped on her finger 3 years ago. He'd had it custom-made, had spent weeks working with the jeweler to get it perfect. "I will love you until the stars burn out," he'd whispered as he'd placed it on her finger. The stars hadn't burned out. But apparently, his love had. "I need to see him," Janice said quietly. "I need to make him listen." Sarah's expression turned worried. "Janice, I don't think that's a good idea. The man just publicly humiliated you. He's not going to." "I don't care." Janice stood, her decision made. "He's my husband. We don't just throw away 3 years because of some photos I've never even seen. I'm going to make him talk to me. I'm going to make him listen." It was the kind of determined naivety that comes from loving someone so completely that you can't yet comprehend they might not love you back the same way. Janice Fletcher still believed in the man she'd married. She still believed that somewhere underneath the ice, Simon Kang's heart still beat for her. She had no idea how wrong she was. Or how right. Monday morning arrived with the cruel indifference of time marching forward. While Janice's world had ended, the rest of Los Angeles went about its business. Traffic still clogged the 405. Coffee shops still served overpriced lattes. And Kang Industries Tower still stood gleaming in downtown LA, a monument to Simon's success. Janice had spent an hour getting ready, choosing her outfit carefully. A tailored navy pantsuit that Simon had always said brought out the warmth in her dark skin. Her locks pulled back in a professional bun. Minimal makeup to hide the evidence of her sleepless night. She wanted to look strong. She needed to look like she wasn't falling apart. Even if she was. The lobby of Kang Industries was all marble and glass, intimidatingly corporate. Janice had been here 100 times, had attended company parties and charity galas, had even helped organize some of them. The security guards knew her. The receptionists greeted her by name. But today, when she approached the reception desk, the young woman behind it looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Kang, she said, her voice carefully neutral. How can I help you? I need to see my husband. Is he in? A pause. Do you have an appointment? Janice blinked. An appointment? I'm his wife. I understand, but Mr. Kang left strict instructions that he's not to be disturbed today. The receptionist wouldn't meet her eyes. Perhaps if you call his assistant. I've been calling. He's not answering. Janice leaned forward, desperation creeping into her voice. Please. Just let him know I'm here. 5 minutes. That's all I need. I'm sorry, Mrs. Kang. I can't. Janice didn't wait to hear the rest. She moved toward the elevators, toward the executive floor where Simon's corner office overlooked the city. She knew this building. She knew which elevator required a keycard and which didn't. She knew the security shift changes and the blind spots in the camera coverage. She made it to the 32nd floor before security caught up with her. Mrs. Kang, please. You can't be here. But she was already at Simon's office door, pushing it open. He sat behind his massive desk, wearing a charcoal suit and an expression of cold indifference. His office was exactly as she remembered, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the LA skyline, minimalist decor in blacks and grays, and a single photo on his desk of them. Their wedding day. They were laughing in the photo, her head thrown back in joy, his arms around her waist. He hadn't removed it yet. That small detail gave Janice hope. Simon, she started. How did you get past security? His voice was flat, emotionless. He didn't look up from his computer screen. Simon, please. You have to listen to me. I don't have to do anything. Now he did look at her, and his eyes were chips of ice. You have 30 seconds before I have you removed. Again. Janice's hands trembled, but she forced herself to stay calm. I didn't cheat on you. Whatever you think you saw, whoever told you whatever they told you, it's a lie. I have never been unfaithful to you. I love you. I have only ever loved you. Simon's jaw clenched. You're going to stand there and lie to my face. I'm not lying. I saw the photos, Janice. He stood now, his full height making him imposing even from across the desk. You and him. The hotel. The dates match your business meetings. The evidence doesn't lie. What photos? I haven't seen any photos. Show them to me. Why? So you can come up with some excuse? Some explanation? Simon's voice rose, emotion finally cracking through his icy exterior. I trusted you. I gave you everything. My family didn't approve, and I defended you. I chose you. And this is how you repay that. Simon, I swear on everything. Get out. No. Not until you listen to me. Simon had already pressed the button on his desk phone. Security. Mrs. Kang is leaving now. Janice rushed around the desk, grabbed his arm. Simon, please. I'm your wife. Doesn't that mean anything? Don't I get a chance to defend myself? Don't you owe me that much? For just a moment, their eyes met. And in that moment, Janice saw something flicker in his expression, pain, perhaps. Doubt. But then his face hardened again, and he pulled his arm from her grasp. I owe you nothing, he said quietly. My lawyers will be in touch about the divorce. The word divorce hit Janice like a physical blow. She stumbled backward just as 2 security guards entered the office. Gentlemen, Simon said, not looking at her anymore. Escort her out of the building. She is no longer welcome here. As the guards took her arms, gently but firmly, Janice found her voice one more time. I didn't do it, Simon. I didn't do it. But he had already turned away, staring out at the city, his back rigid and unyielding. The security guards escorted Janice all the way to the lobby, past co-workers who whispered and stared, past the receptionist who couldn't meet her eyes, past the marble and glass that suddenly felt like a mausoleum instead of a monument. On the sidewalk outside, Janice called the one person who might be able to reach Simon when she couldn't. Janice stood on the sidewalk outside the building where her husband worked, and felt the full weight of her situation settle over her. No one believed her. Not Simon. Not even people who'd known her for years. Because somewhere, somehow, there was photographic evidence of a crime she hadn't committed. And Janice had no idea how to prove her innocence when she didn't even know what she was defending herself against. A week passed. The worst week of Janice's life. The story had gone from entertainment blogs to mainstream news. Her social media accounts were flooded with hate messages. Strangers felt entitled to comment on her marriage, her character, her worth. The marketing agency she'd been building was hemorrhaging clients. Her phone rang constantly with reporters asking for comments she wouldn't give. And through it all, Simon remained silent. Unreachable. His lawyers had sent preliminary divorce papers that sat on her kitchen counter like a death sentence. Janice had tried everything. She'd called. She'd texted. She'd sent emails. She'd even gone to his parents' house in Hancock Park, only to have his mother answer the door with cold eyes and heavily accented English. "You have brought shame to our family. You are not welcome here." Sarah had begged her to stop. "Girl, you're torturing yourself. He's made his decision. You need to let go and move on." But Janice couldn't. Not yet. Not without one more try. Which was how she found herself standing outside the gates of the Bel-Air mansion that she and Simon had bought together 18 months ago. It was early evening, and dark clouds gathered over Los Angeles, threatening one of the city's rare rainstorms. She pressed the intercom button at the gate. Once. Twice. 3 times. No answer. "Simon, I know you're there." She spoke into the intercom, her voice steady despite the anxiety clawing at her chest. "Your car's in the driveway. Please. Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes to talk." Silence. Janice waited. She pressed the button again. And again. Still nothing. Then the rain started. First a few drops, then a steady drizzle, then a downpour. Within minutes, Janice was soaked through, her white blouse clinging to her skin, her hair heavy with water. She should leave. She knew she should. But something kept her rooted to that spot, her finger on the intercom button, her voice calling out to a man who refused to answer. "Do you remember?" she called out, though she knew he probably couldn't hear her anymore. "Do you remember the day we met? It was raining, just like this. You shared your umbrella with me. You said, I've been waiting my whole life to meet someone worth sharing my umbrella with." Her voice broke. "I'm still that person, Simon. I'm still the woman you loved. I'm still your wife. Please. Please." Simon stood at his bedroom window, watching security camera footage on his tablet. He watched her stand in the rain. He watched her speak into the intercom. He watched her slowly crumple, her shoulders shaking with sobs that the rain couldn't hide. His finger hovered over the button that would open the gate. For a long moment, he stood frozen, warring with himself. Part of him wanted to go to her, to pull her inside, to demand answers, to hold her until this nightmare made sense. But the other part, the part that had seen those photos, that had felt the knife twist of betrayal, that part reminded him what happened when you trusted someone who didn't deserve it. His mother's voice echoed in his head, "I told you she was bad for you. I told you this would happen." Simon's finger moved away from the button. He drew the curtains. He left her standing in the rain. Janice didn't know how long she stayed there. An hour, maybe 2. Long enough for the rain to soak through to her bones. Long enough for hypothermia to start creeping in at the edges. Long enough to finally, truly understand that the man she loved was gone. She'd finally accepted defeat and turned to leave when headlights cut through the darkness. A car pulled up, not Simon's, but June's, his assistant. June emerged with an umbrella, his expression pained as he took in Janice's bedraggled state. "Oh, Janice," he said softly. "What are you doing to yourself?" She couldn't answer. Her teeth were chattering too hard. June draped his jacket over her shoulders and held the umbrella over her head. "Come on. Let me drive you home." Her tears were washed away by rainwater as he led her away. If the rain incident had cracked Janice's resolve, what happened next shattered it completely. She'd continued her vigil, though less frequently now. A few times a week, she'd go to the mansion, stand at the gate, and hope. She knew it was pathetic. Sarah told her as much. Her mother, calling from Chicago, begged her to come home. But Janice couldn't leave. Not while there was still a chance. Then the women started arriving. The first one was a Korean actress Janice recognized from dramas, stunning, elegant, exactly the type Simon's mother would approve of. Janice had been sitting in her car across the street from the mansion when she saw the woman's Bentley pull up to the gate. The gate had opened immediately. No intercom required. Janice had watched, numb, as the woman disappeared behind those walls that wouldn't open for her. The actress left 4 hours later. 2 days after that, it was a tech CEO. Then a fashion model. Then women Janice didn't recognize but who all shared certain characteristics: Korean or Korean American, successful, beautiful, and most importantly, not Janice. Simon wasn't even being discreet about it. The paparazzi had caught on, of course. Photos appeared online of Simon with various women, always in public, always visible. Restaurants. Gallery openings. A Lakers game where he'd sat courtside with a startup founder who looked like she'd stepped out of Vogue Korea. The message was clear: he had moved on. Spectacularly. Publicly. Cruelly. And still, Janice came back. It was a Thursday evening when everything finally came to a head. Janice had parked across the street, telling herself this was the last time. Just one more time, and then she'd accept reality. She watched a silver Mercedes pull up. A woman emerged, tall, willowy, wearing a dress that probably cost more than Janice's car. The woman laughed at something on her phone, tossed her long black hair, and pressed the intercom button. The gate opened immediately. Janice couldn't help herself. She got out of her car and walked to the gate just as the Mercedes was pulling through. She didn't know what she hoped to accomplish. She just knew she couldn't sit there and watch anymore. "Simon," she called out. "Simon." The woman in the Mercedes glanced at her through the window, a brief, dismissive look, before the car continued up the driveway. And then he appeared. Simon Kang stepped out onto the front steps of the mansion, and Janice's breath caught despite everything. He wore dark slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and he looked tired. Good, a vindictive part of her thought. I hope he's suffering too. But mostly, she just wanted to run to him. "Janice." His voice carried down the driveway, flat and annoyed. "You need to stop this. I need to stop." She gripped the bars of the gate. "You're parading women through our home, and I need to stop. It's not your home anymore." The words were bullets. "The lawyers are drawing up papers for the property division. You'll get what you're entitled to. I don't want your money, Simon. I want my husband." The woman from the Mercedes appeared in the doorway behind Simon, placing a possessive hand on his arm. She said something in Korean that Janice couldn't hear, and Simon nodded without taking his eyes off Janice. "You should go," he said. "This is becoming pathetic." Pathetic. The word landed like a slap. "You promised me forever," Janice said, her voice breaking. "You stood in front of everyone we love and promised me forever. That was before you destroyed everything we built." Simon's voice remained cold, but something flickered in his eyes. "Before you proved my mother right. Before you showed me exactly what I should have known all along." "What? What should you have known?" Simon's jaw clenched. For a moment, Janice thought he might actually say it, might voice whatever ugly thought his family had planted in his head about her, about them, about the impossibility of their different worlds ever truly merging. But instead, he just said, "Goodbye, Janice." And he turned and walked back into the mansion, the other woman on his arm, leaving Janice standing at the gate of what used to be her home. That night, Janice finally broke. She drove to Sarah's apartment and collapsed into her best friend's arms, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. "I can't do this anymore," she gasped out between sobs. "I can't watch him destroy me piece by piece. I can't keep hoping he'll remember that he loved me. I can't. I can't." Sarah held her, rocked her, let her cry. And when the tears finally subsided, she said gently, "Then don't. The job offer's still open. Fresh start. New city. Leave all of this behind." For 3 years, Janice's entire world had revolved around Simon Kang. Her life, her dreams, her identity, all of it had been built around the foundation of their love. Now that foundation had crumbled, and Janice was left standing in the rubble, alone. "Okay," she agreed. "Okay. I'll go." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of paperwork and packing. Janice signed the preliminary divorce papers without reading them. She put the Malibu beach house on the market. She closed down her struggling marketing agency and accepted the position Sarah had arranged for her at a firm in Manhattan. She did what she should have done weeks ago, she let go. Or at least, she tried to. Her mother flew out from Chicago to help her pack, and Mama Fletcher made no attempt to hide her opinions about the entire situation. "That man and his family never deserved you," she said, wrapping Janice's wedding china in newspaper. "I tried to warn you. I saw how his mother looked at you at that wedding. Like you weren't good enough for her precious son. Mama, please." Janice couldn't handle this conversation again. "No, baby, you need to hear this." Her mother stopped packing and took Janice's face in her hands. "You gave that man everything. You learned his language, you respected his culture, you bent over backwards to make his family accept you. And the first chance he got, he threw you away. That's not love, Janice. That's not what love looks like. He thought I cheated on him. And instead of talking to you, instead of trusting the woman he married, he humiliated you in public and never gave you a chance to defend yourself." Mama Fletcher's eyes flashed with anger. "That's not a man worthy of your tears." Logically, Janice knew her mother was right. But the heart doesn't operate on logic. And her heart still beat Simon's name. On her last night in Los Angeles, Janice stood on the deck of the beach house, watching the Pacific Ocean crash against the shore. She remembered the first time Simon had brought her here, how he'd bought this property because she'd mentioned loving the ocean. "One day, this will be ours," he'd said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "We'll raise our children here. Grow old here. Be happy here." Janice pulled off her wedding ring, she'd kept wearing it despite everything, and held it up to the moonlight. The diamonds caught the light, sparkling with promises that had turned out to be lies. She should throw it in the ocean. Dramatic, final, cathartic. But she couldn't. Instead, she slipped it into her pocket and went inside to finish packing. Her flight was booked for Friday afternoon. She'd said her goodbyes to the few friends she had left in LA. She'd arranged for movers to handle the furniture. She'd done everything that needed to be done. Everything except completely forget Simon Kang. But maybe, she thought, maybe New York would help with that. Maybe 3,000 miles would be enough distance to finally heal. She had no idea that in less than 48 hours, Simon would discover the truth that would bring him to his knees. And by then, she would be gone. Friday morning arrived with the particular clarity that comes after making a difficult decision. Janice woke early, dressed carefully in comfortable travel clothes, and took one last walk on the beach. The sand was cool beneath her bare feet. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and possibility. A fresh start. A chance to be someone other than Simon Kang's wife who cheated. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Simon was about to make a shocking discovery. The annual West Coast Technology Summit drew the biggest names in the industry, and Simon Kang's keynote address on AI integration in real estate had been scheduled for months. He'd considered canceling. The past 5 weeks had been hell, despite his best efforts to appear unaffected. The parade of women, the public appearances, the cold indifference, all of it had been armor against the pain that threatened to consume him every time he remembered Janice's face in the rain. Every time he thought about her voice calling his name. Every time he woke up reaching for her in an empty bed. But Simon Kang didn't cancel. Simon Kang didn't show weakness. So he'd put on his best suit, prepared his presentation, and driven to Century City with his jaw set and his heart locked away. The conference center's main lobby was grand and soaring, with a wall of windows overlooking the Avenue of the Stars. Registration tables lined one side, corporate booths the other. Hundreds of attendees milled about with coffee and name badges, networking with the aggressive friendliness of people looking to make deals. Simon checked in, accepted his VIP badge, and was making his way toward the main conference hall when he saw her. His heart stopped. Janice stood near the hotel bar adjacent to the lobby, wearing a red dress he'd never seen before. Her hair was styled differently, loose and wild instead of the elegant updos she preferred. She was laughing at something, her head tilted back in that way that had always made his chest tight. And she was kissing a man. Not just a polite peck. A real kiss. Passionate. Her hand on the man's chest. His arms around her waist. The world tilted sideways. Simon's carefully constructed armor shattered. 5 weeks of anger, of cold indifference, of pretending he didn't care, all of it disintegrated in the face of seeing his wife with another man. Seeing the photographic evidence come to life right in front of him. She'd come here. To his conference. Was she trying to torture him? Was this some kind of revenge for the humiliation he'd put her through? Before he could think, before he could consider whether confronting her was a good idea, his feet were moving. He crossed the lobby in long strides, his hands clenched into fists, his vision narrowed to tunnel focus. The man Janice had been kissing noticed Simon first. He was tall, blonde, generically handsome, everything Simon wasn't. The man's eyes widened slightly, and he stepped back. Janice, or the woman who looked exactly like Janice, turned to see what had caught her companion's attention. Really, Janice? The word came out harsh, sharp. Simon didn't care that people were starting to stare. You never give up, do you? Is this another ploy to get back at me? Another manipulation? The woman's eyebrows drew together in confusion. Excuse me? Don't play dumb. It's beneath even you. Simon took another step closer. Parading your affair in public, at my conference, what's next? Are you going to follow me to Seoul? Maybe show up at my parents' house with your boyfriend? I think you have me confused with someone else. The woman's voice was different. Sharper. Less soft than Janice's usual tone. And I don't appreciate being accosted by strangers. Strangers? Simon laughed, the sound bitter. We're married, Janice. Or did you conveniently forget that along with your wedding vows? The woman exchanged a glance with her companion, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. Look, I don't know what your deal is, but my name isn't Janice. It's Elena. And I've never seen you before in my life. Elena Jakes. Simon repeated the name slowly, his anger momentarily replaced by confusion. What kind of game was this? Yes. And if you don't back off, I'm going to call security. Elena pulled out her phone as if to demonstrate she wasn't bluffing. Something about her expression, about the genuine confusion and irritation in her eyes, made Simon pause. He looked at her more carefully. The dress was wrong. The hair was wrong. The way she held herself, with a harder edge than Janice's natural warmth, that was wrong too. But her face. God, her face was identical. Let me see your hand, Simon said abruptly. What? No. I'm not. Simon grabbed her wrist, not roughly, but firmly enough that she couldn't easily pull away. He turned her hand over, looking for the small scar on her left palm that Janice had gotten as a child, falling off her bike. The scar she traced for him during one of their late-night talks, sharing childhood stories. No scar. He dropped her hand and moved closer, ignoring her protests. Behind her right ear, Janice had a tiny birthmark shaped like a crescent moon. He'd kissed it 1,000 times. Simon gently pushed back Elena's hair, searching. No birthmark. Oh my God, are you serious right now? Elena shoved him away. What is wrong with you? Simon stumbled backward, his mind racing. The implications crashed over him like a tsunami. Not Janice. The woman in the photos wasn't Janice. Which meant, who are you? His voice came out strangled. Really? Who are you? Elena's anger softened slightly at the raw desperation in his question. She studied him for a moment, seeming to recognize that this was about more than some random harassment. I told you. Elena Jakes. But clearly you have me mistaken for someone else. The words echoed in Simon's head, rearranging everything he thought he knew. Do you have a twin? How do you know that? I only found out a few months ago. I was adopted as a baby, raised in New York. We were separated at adoption, different families took us. Elena's expression shifted from irritation to concern. Are you okay? You look like you're about to pass out. Simon wasn't okay. He was the furthest thing from okay. Because if this woman was Janice's twin, if the photos had been of Elena and not Janice, then everything he'd done, the wine at the anniversary party, the public humiliation, the women he'd paraded, the rain, the cruelty, the divorce papers, all of it had been based on a lie. He'd destroyed his wife for a crime she never committed. He moved backwards. Simon suddenly dashed toward the exit. Wait. Elena called after him. But Simon was gone, leaving his conference, his reputation, his carefully curated image all behind. None of it mattered. Nothing mattered except getting to Janice before it was too late. Simon's hands shook as he drove, making it hard to keep the car steady on the 405. He'd left the conference center in chaos, his assistant June frantically calling, asking where he was, what was happening with the keynote address. Simon had ignored all of it. But now, sitting in traffic, he needed answers. He needed to understand how he'd gotten it so catastrophically wrong. He called his sister. Minji answered on the second ring. Oppa, are you finished with the presentation already? I thought. The photos. Simon cut her off. The photos you showed me of Janice. I need to see them again. Right now. Send them to me. A pause. Why? What's happened? Send them. Now. The edge in his voice must have convinced her. A moment later, his phone pinged with incoming messages. Simon pulled over illegally, in a red zone, not caring, and opened the images. He zoomed in on the woman's face. On her hands. On every detail he'd been too angry to examine closely 5 weeks ago. No scar on the palm. He could see it now in the photo, or rather, the absence of it. He zoomed in on the woman's neck, visible in one shot where she was entering the hotel. No necklace. Janice never took off the delicate gold chain he'd given her on their first anniversary. Never. How had he missed these details? How had he been so blind? Because you wanted to believe it, a voice whispered in his head. Because your mother planted the seed, and you watered it with your own insecurities. Simon called Minji back. Where did you say these were taken? The Lowe's Santa Monica. Why? Oppa, what's going on? What date? June 14th. I told you that. Why are you? Simon pulled up his calendar. June 14th, a niece had attended a charity gala that evening. At the Beverly Hilton. Which meant the woman in the photos couldn't have been Janice. Did you meet the investigator in person? Did you verify these photos yourself? What? Of course I trusted the investigator. He came highly recommended. By who? By Mother. Minji's voice had gone quiet. She recommended him. She said he was discreet, thorough. Why? Oppa, what's happened? Simon closed his eyes. His mother. Of course. She'd never approved of Janice. Had made her disapproval clear at every family dinner, every holiday, every interaction. And when the perfect opportunity had presented itself, a twin sister who looked exactly like Janice, had she orchestrated this? Or simply a horrible coincidence? The woman in the photos isn't Janice, Simon said, his voice hollow. It's her twin sister, Elena. They were separated at birth. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Oh my God, Minji finally whispered. Oppa, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I thought, the investigator said. Simon ended the call. His car screeched to a halt outside Sarah's apartment building in mid-Wilshire. He didn't bother locking the car, didn't care about the no parking zone. He took the stairs 2 at a time to the 3rd floor and pounded on her door. Sarah opened it with eyes full of fury. Why the hell are you here? She moved to slam the door in his face. Simon caught it with his palm. Please. I need to know where Janice is. I need to. You need to leave before I call the cops. Sarah's voice was ice. You've done enough damage. The words tumbled out desperately. The photos, they weren't Janice. They were of someone who looked exactly like her. I was wrong. I was so wrong about everything. Sarah's expression flickered surprise, then something harder. And you just figured this out? After you humiliated her? After you destroyed her? Yes. I'm an idiot. I'm worse than an idiot. But please, I need to see her. I need to tell her I know the truth. Where is she? You don't deserve to know. Sarah, please. Simon's voice cracked. I love her. I've always loved her. I made a terrible mistake. Just tell me where she is. Sarah stared at him for a long, terrible moment. Then her expression shifted to something that looked almost like pity. You're too late, Simon. She's already on her way to the airport. Her flight leaves at 2:15. Simon's blood turned to ice. He checked his phone, 1:51 p.m. 24 minutes. Which airport? LA. Yes, but Simon, you won't make it. The traffic. He was already running back down the stairs. Simon. Sarah called after him. Even if you catch her, she might not forgive you. But Simon was gone, the door to the stairwell slamming behind him. He drove like a madman, weaving between lanes on the 10 freeway, his mind a chaotic storm of regret and desperation. Every image of Janice's face played on repeat, her confusion at the anniversary party as wine dripped down her beautiful face, her tears as security dragged her away, her standing in the rain outside his gate. All of it his fault. All of it based on a lie he'd been too proud, too stubborn, too damaged to question. Simon had chosen to believe the worst instead of trusting the woman he'd vowed to love forever. Traffic slowed near the interchange. Simon slammed his palm against the steering wheel, cursing. He checked the time again, 2:03 p.m. 12 minutes. He took the shoulder, ignoring the angry honks from other drivers, ignoring everything except the desperate need to reach Janice before she disappeared from his life forever. The regret was a physical thing now, sitting on his chest like a boulder. Every cruel word he'd said. Every time he'd refused to answer her calls. The women he'd brought to their home specifically to hurt her. The way he'd watched her stand in the rain and done nothing. What kind of man did that to someone they claimed to love? A coward. A fool. A man who'd let his fears turn him into someone he didn't recognize. Simon pushed the car harder, weaving through traffic with reckless abandon. He didn't care about tickets or accidents or anything except reaching her. Finally, the airport appeared ahead. He took the exit too fast, tires squealing, and headed for Terminal 6. 2:09 p.m. 6 minutes. Simon abandoned his car at the curb, didn't bother parking, didn't care about the tickets or the towing. He just ran. The terminal was chaos. Friday afternoon travelers clogged every corridor. Simon pushed through them, his eyes scanning desperately for the departures board. There. Flight 387 to JFK. 2:15 p.m. departure. Gate 62B. Status. Boarding. He ran harder, his expensive shoes slapping against the polished floor. Security checkpoint ahead. The line snaked back endlessly. I need to get through. Simon shouted at no one in particular. My wife, her flight's leaving. A TSA agent stepped forward. Sir, you need to wait in line like everyone else. I don't have time. Simon pulled out his phone, tried calling Janice again. Straight to voicemail. Please, I just need to reach her before. Sir, step back in line or you'll be removed from the terminal. Simon wanted to scream. Wanted to push past them all, consequences be damned. But he forced himself